Hello, this is your brother and friend Joshua Ponsafo of the New African Concept. And once again, you are warmly welcome to another edition of the SANKOFA Shift. Here we do nothing but retrieving the past to building the future. And over a couple of weeks since the inception of this program, we would like to appreciate all our viewers for the constant comments and then the suggestions and then the thoughts. It is getting bigger, hotter, and then better. And we are very much privileged that in the course of time, we will be hosting even other people or persons as well who are also very knowledgeable on this very subject. We have done the introduction. We went through the introductory phase of these discussions where we explored the nation or the state-nation gap. And in conclusion, we said that Ghana is a state, but it is yet to become a nation. The nation of Ghana is still under construction, and it is nobody's responsibility but you and I. The onus is on us to go beyond building the statehood of Ghana to also building, and much more, building the nationhood of Ghana. Why? Because we established clearly that the substance or the very core or the true Ghana is the nation, is the values, or they are the very cultural elements. And then the form then was or is the state. For the next couple of weeks ahead of us, it is going to be an interesting session. I think I promised that we will be going into the bowels of history and we will be unlocking what is Ghana? Where is Ghana coming from? How was Ghana formed before the coming of the white man? How was Africa? Did we really have a continent fixated and labeled Africa before the coming of the white man? And even what is Gold Coast, or what was Gold Coast? Point of independence. What were the various activities that led to independence? And what was its contributing, elements? And post-independence, 69 years down the line, we are going to swim through a long journey of history. And I can assure you that it is going to be interactive, it is going to be practical, it is going to be filled with lessons. This is the spirit of SANKOFA Shift. We want to retrieve the past, but not merely to repeat the errors of the past, but to take the lessons of the past and build a formidable future. Here at the New African Concept, we have always said that we see a new tomorrow. Against all odds, we are confident of what lies ahead of us tomorrow. As we go through these histories, we'll be looking at the religious context, the political context, the economic context, and then we also explore the cultural and then the social. So bear in mind that as we go through the historical tenets, we are interested in 5 major elements as far as the developments are concerned. We'll be looking at the religious contribution, the socio-cultural contributions, the economic contributions, and then the political contributions. How it has swum through up to this point. For this week and then the next, we will be looking at the religious context to set the tone for what is ahead of us before we delve into the proper history. What I mean by the religious context is simple. How was our community before the coming of the white man? And this is so crucial because there are several errors or mistakes we do. Sometimes we think that, Ghana or Africa was heaven and then the white man brought hell. It is because in most cases we are oblivious of how our culture was before the coming of the white man. In a couple of weeks, this is what we want to do. Now, I will start by reading an extract by a man called Frederick Lord Lugard. Who was he? As you can see on your screen, he was one of the governors of Nigeria. Just like in Ghana, we have the likes of Adam, we have the likes of Charles McCarthy, Gordon Gaggisberg, and then many others. The British governors of Nigeria, one of the commonest of them, or the most popular of them, happened to be a man called Frederick Lord Lugard. Now, in 1926, he published a book called The Dual Mandate, where he wrote about a number of things. And part of what he wrote, he was describing the Nigerian or the African of that time. Bear in mind, this was 1926. It means this very year, 2026, is exactly 100 good years since he published the book. Now, from, page 70, he was describing the black man 100 years ago. And I want you to follow suit. He said this, that concerning the Nigerian or the black man 100 years over, in character and temperament, the typical African of this race type is a happy, thriftless, excitable person. What he was saying was that our forefathers that he was dealing with, they are excitable. When we say someone is excitable, it means that the person is unstable. You can easily, drive the person or stimulate the person. In other words, the person is a bit more emotional. You can excite him or her. Lacking in self-control, discipline, and foresight. He is describing, bear in mind, not the African today, but the African 200 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And he's saying that the people he saw, they were lacking in self-control. So that when you leave them, they will give birth plenty. Is it not a wonder and sometimes funny that those who are economically sound normally give birth maybe 1, 2, 3. And then you go to places that you could see that these people are struggling even to make ends meet, even to get a 3 square meals. You realize that they have children 10, 9, 7, 8. So they are lacking in self-control, discipline, and foresight. Naturally courageous and naturally courteous and polite. So you see where we get our please from. The average Ghanaian will say please to everything. Even if you want to insult you, will add please. Please, good morning. Please, can I come? Please, this. So it is not new to us. Our forefathers were doing that. Then he said that, full of personal vanity, with little sense of veracity. Veracity means truth. Little sense of truthfulness. It means, said you see pain through channel. Sahada, our forefathers, in other words, it is hard to rely on the black man then, and it has not changed. Even to the extent that even if the person is a Christian or a pastor, sometimes you will have to look at the person too. Form of music. So you see, we love music and dancing and loving weapons as an Oriental loves jewelry. His thoughts are concentrated on the events and feelings of the moment. A very serious point. He was saying that the black man 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, he was lacking in foresight, and that his mind is concentrated on the feelings and events of the moment. Have you realized we are not so much into building the future, casting vision, 100-year plan, 50-year plan? We are not so much into that. We are obsessed with what we will be enjoying in the now. That is why there is galamsey. We don't predict that adia ye say etwoswa ye betumi asay oman no ebebo. If we say insuo ebesay, ebedu maybe we may have to import potable water. Now so okache kwa bwania say na onwen nchirima ho a obeda me joke. No nchirima no dream me ho. So now at the end of the day we are destroying our land and we are not thinking about the future. For your information, we are not the architects. This has been the usual tone even today. And he suffers little from the apprehension for the future or the grief for the past. One Lord Lugard, in fact, he was a racist, definitely, and had a lot of things that he spoke down against the black man. So I'm not using him as a standard. However, we must come to a point where we must speak the hard truth to ourselves. And mind you, these things was even before the coming of the white man. So it is not the white man who taught the black man how to lie. It is not the white man who taught the black man how to be emotional. It is not the white man who taught the black man that, to concentrate his moments on just today and not to have foresight. This was indigenous in our culture before the coming of the white man. As I said in previous videos, the white man only deepened the wounds which were already existent. That is very important. There were already existing wounds, and that is the idea that we want to look at these wounds, how it has derailed us, and what we can and must do about it. So, in wrapping up, he said that he suffers little for the apprehension for the future. In other words, the statistics, the data, the fact that things will destroy in the course of time, it does not move him. Neither is he concerned about the grief for the past. 3rd June 2015, we all saw or heard the sad event, flooding somewhere in Accra or circle thereabout. And then many people who were finding shelter from the rains under the canopy of the filling station. The fuel intermixed with the water. There was a spark, and then over 150 people perished, burned to ashes. You would have thought that such death of monumental magnitude would have spoken to our conscience and would have said to ourselves that within a year or two or maximum 3 years, all of us, we must come together, leaders and citizens, to make sure that flooding will be a thing of the past. The following year, it came again. I've always contended that I think it is about time we add flooding to the number of festivals in Ghana. Because just like every year we celebrate Homeland, Bechocho, Ojra, and all other festivals, it seems that flooding is assuming a posture of a festival in Ghana. Because every year the rains will come. And this very year, we are also within flooding. It has always been there, perennial flooding. And that is what Lord Lugard was saying, that some way, somehow, the grief of the past does not drive him to put in measures to change things. Accra Kumasi Road. This road has killed so many people than some of the wars of history. But we seem not to be concerned. We seem not to be bothered. Look at our hospitals. Many of them, they are more than death traps. No bed syndrome. Killing people. But some way, somehow, we only use it for statistical purposes. Well, he said that his mind is far nearer to the animal world. Well, I mean, that is quite derogatory. As I said, he had that racist disposition. I mean, so let me wrap up with this final aspect, where he said that he lacks the power of organization and is conspicuously deficient in the management and control alike of men or business. So for Lord Lugard, he's saying that the Nigerians or the black men he was dealing with 100 or 200 years ago, they lack the power of organization and management. And indeed to them, they are unable to manage it. Well, Kwame Nkrumah had a contrary view. On the Wednesday 6th of March 1957, he rightly said, on the eve of independence, he said that this day a new African has been born, and that we are getting ready to show to the world that if the black man is given the chance, he will prove that the black man is capable of ruling or managing his own affairs. It is about almost 70 years down the line. And the question is the black man truly capable of managing his own affairs? If you are to ask me, I'll say a resounding yes. I fully agree and acquiesce with Kwame Nkrumah on that point. However, there are certain protocols needed to materialize it. So he was saying that he loved the display of power, but fails to realize its responsibility. So in other words, he's saying that the black man loves power, the display of power, titles, call me doctor, call me professor, so that if he's a prof and you call him doc, he will remind you that point of correction, I'm not a doc, I am prof. If he is a doc and you call him Mr. Utiate, call him Bema, approach me with my title, doctor. We love the display of power, but the responsibility, a word honorable, His Excellency. We love the display of power, but we deny the responsibility thereof. And then he says that perhaps the two traits which have impressed me as those most characteristic of the African native are his lack of apprehension and his ability to visualize the future. From Lord Lugard, this is what he wrote in page 70 in his book, The Dual Mandate. Let us put together as we wrap up for today's session. Now, let us not be angry at him. Normally, that's what we want to do. Oh, who is he? Why is he talking down on us? And then this. Yes, I do not agree with him on a number of things. But we must admit that the black man has not really changed much. Though there have been some changes on the external. And this very statement confirms what I have said over the past 4 or 5 weeks. That the substance is the real deal. And that is exactly what he's saying. So any change that is external and superficial will not be sustainable as long as the internal change, nothing has happened to it. Why are we saying that? Why we are saying that is simple. Look at what he's saying. 100 years down the line, a lot of things have changed. Externally, our architectural designs have changed. Our mansions have changed. Even our clothing have changed. Our media have changed. Our technology have changed. But mind you, the values have not changed. The disposition he's talking about have not changed. Our love for power, but not responsibility, have not changed. And the very things that our forebears were doing, it has not changed. There have been lots of changes on the outside, but very minimal change on the inside. And that is the nation state thing we have been talking about. Next week, we are going to look at the very reason or the very root cause of these happenings. And then after we are done, we will now look at the historical formation. How was Ghana formed? And how have we fared over the past 69 years? God richly bless you. And this has been your brother and friend Joshua We'll see you next week as we continue the narrative of SANKOFA SHIFT.